All right, people, we are live on the YouTube. I haven't done one of these in a while. Just me and you, human to human, through the tubes of the internet. I'm very excited today. We cracked 600,000 subscribers overnight. I suspect, according to our internal metrics, it happened at about 2 a.m. Pacific time. And it's pretty awesome. This last 100,000 came faster than any 100,000 before that. The 500,000 mark came faster than any 100,000 before that, and so on. We've really just grown tremendously thanks to you guys. And it's pretty awesome, and there's so much good stuff happening right now with the show, with the conversations we're having, with all these new interesting alliances. You know, I said at the beginning of the year that 2018 is going to be the year of unusual alliances. I think there's a ton of evidence for that already. So I'm just feeling very good about everything that's going on. We shot 2 shows already today, so I've already done 2, both of them were about an hour and a half actually, interviews today. One of them I'm going to leave as a surprise, although I am going to tip you guys off to some upcoming things. And then one of them I'll tell you about in just a moment, because we are expanding some things. We're doing some new little bonus things and all sorts of cool stuff. But anyway, so in honor of 600,000 subscribers, I thought we'd do a Q&A, and I'll share some thoughts with you and all that good stuff. If you want to just say anything to me, now is your chance. So of course, if you are a member on Patreon, you get the special benefits that only a patron gets, which is you'll be bumped up to the top of the line. So if you have any questions, you can just ask in the Patreon feed. That goes directly to David and Amira. Otherwise, you can jump in on Super Chat, and if you throw a couple bucks or whatever it is, the more you give, I guess, basically, the easier it is for us to see it and track it. And I have an iPad, a fancy iPad from this little startup company called Apple, and the questions get directly sent to me. So it comes from you and somehow magically ends up right here in front of me, and we'll do it for about an hour. Emma is in studio. If you're following on Twitter, you saw we are, I believe, the only interview show in the world that has a pet bed on set and a pet in it at this very moment. So Emma's right over there. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff going on. I'm really feeling good about things. I know if you just listen to most of the people, especially in mainstream news, cable news, everyone's hysterical, everything's crumbling, everything's horrible, Trump, and It's like, I actually think there's a lot of cool stuff happening right now, and I'm very psyched. So let me just give you a couple little things that are upcoming, and then we'll jump into some of this. I see stuff rolling in already, so that's great. So first off, one of the interviews I did today will be aired in February. So during President's Week, which is February 17th, I believe that's the Monday, we are doing 5 shows in 5 days with 5 different professors about 5 different presidents. Former presidents, and I don't want to tell you all the presidents, but I interviewed a professor today all about this Abraham Lincoln fella, and we got into the good, the bad, the nitty-gritty of all of it. We've shot 2 of those already, but that'll be just a great week, and I want to do more of that kind of thing where we give you a little historical context. What I'm trying to do with all of these interviews is not only learn the history about some of these presidents, but also how we can view them through a 2018 lens. What would they be electable or popular or interested in politics in 2018? You know, and some of that's obviously, you know, a little bit of conjecture, and you have to kind of, well, it's up to the person sitting across from me to tell me what they think. But getting great scholars in here and just doing 5 shows like that, that's sort of like we've done YouTube Week in the past. And we're going to try to do more of that kind of thing. One other thing I want to tip you off to before we jump into the Q&A is that I forget what day it is, but January 31st, I guess that's probably next Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, but someone can correct me. January 31st, we will crash the internet because on this very channel right here, we will have Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro in studio. So I'm incredibly psyched about that. I'm going to try to do this in a completely different way where we're not going to just talk about sort of the standard political stuff that we're talking about. I've got a couple ideas that I think are really going to be different than a lot of the things that you're hearing of these 2 guys. Obviously, Jordan and Ben are out there all the time. They're both on fire. I love the fact that they've caught fire. I think there's some places of agreement and disagreement. That's completely irrelevant. I just love that they've so caught in the zeitgeist of what's happening right now. Obviously, Jordan in particular, after that Channel 4 news thing, which was just so beyond ridiculous. Which, you know, it's sort of interesting. I'm sure many of you saw this, where the interviewer, who was very unprepared, and I know what it's like to be an interviewer, she basically was trying to imply that his right to free speech is less than someone, in this case a trans person's, right to be not offended, and he just dealt with it so beautifully. And I think it actually will be looked back years from now as one of the seminal moments in sort of what's happening with the free speech movement and with liberalism and all of the stuff that we're talking about all the time, sort of like the Sam Harris, Ben Affleck, gross and racist thing was. I think another one of those that bubbled up into mainstream was Ben Shapiro with Piers Morgan about guns. But occasionally, this group of people that Eric Weinstein has coined the term intellectual dark web, and I see that kind of catching along, that this crew that you guys are watching online and listening to and all that, that this crew is out there, and occasionally we're bubbling into mainstream. I don't even think we need them anymore. I get all kinds of offers at this point. I don't really even want them. But I think it's cool that there's some sort of interesting crossover stuff happening right now. And all right, let's jump into some questions. Holy schmoly, they're flying in. Super chat, you are the most truthful interviewer on YouTube. Not a question, but I appreciate it. I do the best I can. I try, well, I don't lie to you, and I try not to, you know, fudge facts, or I tell you what I think, and if I screw up occasionally, okay. And as some of you guys know, there have been times where I have screwed something up, and we pre-tape. We don't always go live as we're going right now. And my guys will say to me after, you know, do you want to get rid of that? And I never do, because all right, I'm human. I screwed up something. There's one thing, I don't even need to mention it to get the trolls to start the feeding frenzy. But there's one thing that I really screwed up on a factual thing, which I did address in the comments right down below, but we left it there. And it's like, all right, I'm human. Okay, Patreon, will you have Glenn Beck on again? Absolutely. I really enjoyed that conversation with Glenn when we had him in here. Was it about a year ago already? Wow, time flies. I think Glenn is a good guy. He's had an interesting kind of navigation of what he is and where he is politically over these last couple years, as so much has kind of changed. But certainly on the libertarian stuff and the small government stuff and your individual liberty and to live your life as you see fit, Glenn and I certainly agree on a lot of that stuff, most of it. Yeah, I think The Blaze is actually doing a profile piece on me. They interviewed me. You know, I'm very leery of interviews at this point, or at this point when BuzzFeed or any of these places reach out to me, I pretty much just ignore it. But a Blaze writer reached out to me, seemed like a great guy. We did our due diligence. I sat in here with him for a couple hours, and I think we're doing a photo shoot, and it sounds like they're going to do a fair spread on me, but we shall see. Would you or have you considered inviting Penn Jillette? I'd love to have Penn Jillette. We've had a couple back and forths with him. David maybe can let me know where we're at with that. Big time libertarian. I briefly met him for a split second when I spoke at the Reason rally in DC about a year and a half ago. I'd love to have him on. Penn, if you're watching this, let's do it, man. Come on now. What are you doing over there? Super chat. Hey, Dave, will you be having Thomas Sowell on your show at some point? Yes, I have his advanced copy of his new book, which I think drops in about 2.5 weeks. I have so many books that upcoming guests are sending me. I've got Steven Pinker's book over here and a couple others. We're just waiting to work out all the logistics with Dr. Sowell. Obviously, he doesn't do a ton of interviews at this point. I believe he's 86 years old, but probably the most influential classical liberal thinker sort of in the modern day, or at least certainly in that top tier. That goes without saying. He's up at Stanford, so what we're going to do for that is what we did with, I can't even say it, but can't say that. There's a reason I can't say it. Just let it be. But we're going to do an on-location shoot at Stanford University with Dr. Sowell, and I'll try to get some other people that are in the San Francisco area because we have to rent a studio. I got to fly my guys up there and hotels and all that. And that, by the way, is fully funded by you guys that support us on Patreon, because per video, we certainly don't make any of that real money back. And so you guys absolutely enable us to do that. By the way, speaking of monetization, which I'm happy to talk about if you guys want to get into it all, my interview for tomorrow is with a guy named Max Lugavere. Max, an old friend of mine who has a great book coming out soon called Genius Foods. And he's doing all this stuff on brain health and food and diet and exercise. And I'm in the middle of this paleo thing right now. So it was a great time to be interviewed. I also wanted to get away from politics a little bit this week. Anyway, we just looked on our back end and it's already demonetized. It's a video about food and your brain. What? So we're already fighting the demonetization before it even goes public. But it's just like, the slew of this thing is it's just endless. Super chat, congratulations, Dave. I really appreciate the work you do. Thank you very much. Super chat, are you going to go on Louder with Crowder again, or would you have Stephen on your show for a longer format interview? Absolutely. I'm happy to do it anytime that they ask. I do Crowder probably every maybe other month or so. And we were trying to get him here while he's on this little break. I know they're working, I think they're redoing his studio, but it didn't quite work out. But he's welcome in this chair anytime. I really like Stephen. I think he gets me to sort of back to my old comedy self, which I want to talk to you guys about in a little bit. And I did have him on once when we were on Aura TV. This is over 2 years ago now. And we did it via Skype, and we didn't really know each other, but you might find that interesting. Let's see. Patreon, what guests have you got lined up or hope to in the new year? So as I said, Thomas Sowell, we're just working out the logistics. Steven Pinker, I think we have in March. He'll be in town for a live event with Sam Harris, middle of March. So I think we have him for that. We've got this YouTube or this President's Week situation lined up. We've got Mike Schellenberger, who is running for president in California. And he originally was running as an independent, although was a lifetime Democrat. Now he's running as a Democrat. I just found that out. And a really interesting guy who sort of bounces between sort of the standard Democratic stuff, which is kind of, and the progressive stuff that I don't love, but also has this really interesting libertarian streak that I do like. I think sort of fits within the old classical liberal line of thinking, and a couple other cool things. I don't want to tip everything off right now. This isn't, by the way, one of the ways that becoming a patron has its rewards. I do tip off people, especially in the small group chats, to some of the things upcoming. Oh, by the way, I see a few people asking. We do sell this classical liberal T-shirt on our merch store. It's Teespring. It's teespring.com/Rubin Report, or they'll get me the exact link. I think I have the link here. Do I have the link here? Oh, how about this, people? Just go to rubinreport.com/store, and it'll send you over there. And we got all kinds of stuff. We got Rubin Report mugs and sweatshirts and stickers and whatever else you got there. Okay. Let's see. Will you have a YouTube week of all liberal or progressive leaning guests? That's an interesting idea to really try. Just in the last couple of days, I've invited Rob Reiner on the show. I invited this guy, Greg Proops, who's a lefty comic who compared me to Goebbels, the Nazi. So I invited him on the show. He blocked me on Twitter. That's an interesting idea. If I could find 5 progressives in a row to do something with that. It's interesting the way you wrote it. I think it said liberal or progressive. I would still argue, and I saw someone break this down on Facebook once, that most of my guests actually are liberal. Of course, it comes with that first part. And that being a classical liberal these days, as I often say, defending my liberal positions is becoming a conservative value, or defending my liberal values is becoming a conservative position, depending on which way you want to word it, that liberals right now, old school liberals certainly, are having an easier time working with or talking to libertarians, conservatives, ANCAPs, whatever else it is. But it's sort of the far lefties that are kind of lining up against all of us. But I'm always open to having those conversations, truly. Let's see. Dave, when will you cover the gun control debate, and are you willing to sit down with big names in the Second Amendment community, such as Tim from MAC? So I don't know Tim specifically. We haven't done a ton on guns, but I touch on it with a whole bunch of different guests. I think the most we ever did was with Antonia Okafor, who I love. Antonia, I think she's really great. She's a rising star, by the way, in conservatism or Republican politics, whatever you want to call it. And she really is talking about why young black women have to arm themselves to be safe. It's an interesting ploy, not a ploy, it's an interesting play on how this conversation is framed, and she's really taking the power back to herself. And I really like her. Can you flex those beautiful biceps for us? What's going on there? Is this a flex? How am I doing here? That's not bad. That's not bad. Look at that. All right. That's, I'm on all this grass-fed butter with this paleo thing. I think it's going right to the muscles. Okay, let's see. Hey, Dave, really love your work. Been watching for a while now. Keep it up. Question, do you like cartoons, 90 cartoons, like DuckTales or Bonkers? Well, I don't know what Bonkers is, but DuckTales was part of the Disney afternoon, of course. Now, I was born in '76, so by the time the Disney afternoon was really in its heyday, I probably should have been out there doing some other things. But yeah, I watched DuckTales and Tailspin and Gummy Bears. What else was on that Disney afternoon? I watched all that stuff. But my real cartoons of my childhood, definitely He-Man, G.I. Joe, and Transformers were the big three. If I remember correctly, Transformers and G.I. Joe were on back-to-back on weekdays, maybe around 3 and 3:30. When was He-Man on? Was He-Man on at 4? I think it was Channel 5 before it was Fox in New York. So maybe somebody can correct me on that. Oh, I just watched a great documentary, actually, on Netflix. They've got this new thing. It's called Where the Toys Are or something like that, where they track, like, just your favorite toys from the old days. So they do one on He-Man. That's the one I saw so far. But I think there's one on G.I. Joe, probably Star Wars, and all that. It's pretty cool. Okay. Oh, and by the way, now I have it in front of me for sure. Peterson and Shapiro. Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro will be in studio together live for about a 2-hour live stream. We'll see how long we can go. Peterson's got a live event in LA that night that I will be attending, by the way. Wednesday, January 21st at 12 p.m. That's our live stream. Peterson's event is that night. Oh, I'm sorry, January 31st. Sorry, this thing's moving fast because you guys are asking me a lot of questions. Okay. Patreon. Have you ever considered having guests discuss simple subjects to focus on how constructive you can make a conversation over the little things? I believe one can have the right thing to say, but the wrong way to go about it. That's interesting. You know, I think in general we've done a pretty good job of that, like getting people to just sit down and explain what they believe. But I think what your question really is getting to the heart of what is so wrong with almost everything right now, that people can't agree on basic things. We're always at each other's throats. That's a good idea, to kind of pick some really basic topics, maybe that are outside of the political realm, and dive into them. That's a good idea. Let me think about that. I will make note of it. Oh, by the way, so this past weekend, you know, I've been telling you guys that I've wanted to get back into stand-up for a long time. So if you don't know, I did stand-up for about 12 years in New York City, and we took down all my old videos because I just didn't, you know, it was like my formative years. A lot of it was sort of topical stuff. I just didn't want it all on YouTube, and it's not that relevant to the me of today. But anyway, because I think stand-up, unfortunately, if you look on Twitter, just most of these mainstream comics have become so hyper-partisan and lefty progressive, and it's just dribble, and they're screaming all the time and telling everyone that they're racist. They're not winning with comedy, right? Like, what would George Carlin be doing these days? Do you think he'd be bitching and moaning and demanding books like Milo's book not be published like I saw comics doing? No, they'd be attacking relentlessly through comedy, whatever it is that they believe, whether they wanted to attack Trump or the left or whatever. So finally, I've mentioned it a couple times on air, David Smalley, when I had him in here, said, all right, I'm booking something at the Comedy Store. So I made my return to stand up on Saturday night at the Comedy Store here in LA, sold out room, and I don't want to pat myself on the back, and Rucka, if you're watching, he was there. You guys know YouTuber, I'm Rucka. He was there, he can confirm this, and a couple of you guys that showed up because I tweeted it out. I mean, I killed. Like, I just somehow like got back to my full roots. It was all coming back to me. And you know, it's like, I know what I'm saying now in terms of, a good comic has to have two things, basically. You got to say something. Now, I think most comics are deficient at this part. Like, really try to say something that's true. Most comics, you know, they talk about, I can't tie my shoes, oh, this happened to me, you know, blah, 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 like I'm some sort of pathetic weirdo. Okay, but I think if you say something true, that's what a truly transcendent comic does. And if I really go back into this, that's what I would want to do. So I know what I'm saying now, and the comic tricks that I learned all those years, I just kind of have to get them all tuned right, get all my tools sort of lined up properly. But for that night, it came back. I mean, I crushed. There was a point where I said to the audience, I was like, I think I'm about done here, and they applauded to keep me on stage. We should have got some video of it. I wish we did. But in any event, I don't think I'm really going back into stand-up in the conventional sense, like I want to be at the clubs again. It's a really tough life. I lived that life, literally 12 years standing out on street corners, handing out tickets. Fortunately now, because you know, of certain successes that I've reached, I wouldn't have to do that anymore. But I'm thinking maybe I'm going to do like 20 shows, just random nights that I'm going to pick to do shows, and then I'm going to rent out a theater and do like an hour-long special, and then we'll probably just post it here or we'll sell it or something like that. It's like we can do everything without mainstream anymore, which is pretty awesome. And it was just nice to get back to that piece of myself, you know what I mean? Like, it was such an important piece, probably the most important piece of my personality for I mean, literally 12 years right out of college. I started in '98. My first stand-up gig was in May of '98. That's crazy. That's almost 20 years ago. God, that's bananas. Super chat. I learned so much from your show. This is the kind of stuff that the internet makes possible. This is true democracy. Love from Morocco. I would love to visit Morocco. My brother-in-law is Moroccan. Do you make shakshuka? I believe that is a Moroccan dish, which I'm actually pretty decent at making. Let's see. Will you be a guest at Milo's new show at some point? Does Milo have a new show? I've been pretty busy. I guess Milo has a new show. I assume he would have me on. 20 bucks on Super Chat. Hey Dave, I'm a gay classical liberal as well in the UK, surrounded by leftist gay friends. I can't say anything reasonable without being called ignorant or misinformed. It's like beating my head against a brick wall. Any ideas? You know, I've talked about this a little bit, but I see all of the minority communities splitting, and you just got to be awake enough to see it, and you'll see it. I promise you will. I see the black community splitting. Watch what Candace Owens is doing on Twitter right now. Put aside our little guys, save Dave thing, okay? But look what she's doing, and look at the explosion that she's creating. She's working with Charlie Kirk, who I had on last week at Turning Point USA, and she's really catching fire right now, talking about black issues from a conservative perspective. I think the gay community is starting to realize you don't have to be a pure leftist and believe in collectivism and groupthink. You know, part of the gay history was sort of being kind of subversive, and you had your own clubs and your own whatever. Now, I was never really into that stuff, and I was closeted for a long time. And I'm not like a real partier in sort of like going out and getting wasted and dancing. I'm a horrible dancer. I dance like Bill Cosby, which at one time was funny, but now he's the biggest serial rapist of all time. Less funny. I heard he just did stand-up last night again. He's 80 years old. I don't know what happened with that. But in any event, I truly believe that so much of the gay identity is based on being an individual. Be yourself, right? Like, if you're going to come out and tell the world, wow, my sexuality is different, right? Like, that's something that's so personal and so individual to you. Why then push yourself into some groupthink collectivist nonsense? So I think a lot of gays, I mean, I hear this all the time because I get a ton of emails like this and I see what people say to me on Twitter and Facebook and all that. And even when I go out, I used to live in West Hollywood, which is literally the gayest place on earth. They have rainbow crosswalks. And people would come up to me and say, Dave, I can't talk about this stuff with my friends. They've gotten so hysterical. So I think there's some cool stuff happening in the black community. I think it's happening in the gay community. I think it's happening in the Jewish community. I think it's happening in the Asian community, in the Indian community, that people are realizing if you don't want to be judged as a group, it doesn't mean you have to be a card-carrying Republican tomorrow. I'm certainly not. But what it does mean is you have to reevaluate and stop. You know, yeah, you probably, I'm going to guess to the person that wrote this, that you're probably a thoughtful, decent human being. And if your friends are going to, tell you that you're a racist or you're a bigot or whatever because you feel differently on taxes or you feel differently about immigration or whatever it is, at some point it's unfortunate. I always say the thing about don't lose friends over politics, but you get to a point with that where you can always turn the other cheek, but then at some point you need friends that enrich you too. And I still have some struggles with this in my own personal life with friends right now, believe it or not. Maybe I'll expand on that at some other point. But sacrificing your own thoughts to hang out with a couple people, probably not the greatest idea. Okay, back over to Patreon. Will you ever come over to the UK to do some talks around universities? And then there's another one, come to the UK, please. Yes, we're working on a couple things. I have not been to London since, I was only there once, I was only in the UK once, since 1997, which is a long time ago. I did a sort of the European thing, and I have not, 1997, so I'm long overdue. So let's see. Can you see a competitor to YouTube arising as the anti-right ideology eventually eats itself? Look, there's a lot going on in this space. Like, everybody knows it. If you're following my Twitter feed and you see how quickly we get demonetized the second we put up a video, and then what's happening right now is it gets demonetized for that first 24 hours. I have to publicly fight it. Then they do monetize it usually, not all of them, but they usually monetize it, the vast majority of them at this point. But they do it 24 or 48 hours later. virtually all of your views, I would guess at least 75% of your views, come in that 24 to 48 hour period, because that's how the algorithm works. The algorithm is pushing things out that are new. Excuse me. So what they're doing is they're like whacking us with a bat. Now we're down and we're laying there and we're in pain, and then 24 hours later they're sending us the ambulance. So it's a shitty situation. Look, I have said this 1,000 times, and I know that my haters are going to misquote me on it as always. I don't know that they're targeting me or targeting non-leftists or targeting conservatives. I don't know exactly what's going on. But that's part of the problem. I want the company to be more transparent. I love YouTube. I can say that with no reservations. All of my success, the reason what you guys are watching right now, right? I think some people are watching on Facebook as well, but I mean, it's all because of YouTube, these amazing tools that they give us. And by the way, no one's forcing me to be here. No one's forcing me to do this. So I want this thing to be better. So I'm trying actually to be completely consistent with the rest of my views, which are, I don't want the government to have to tell them what to do. You know, PragerU, and you know my feelings about Dennis, and I love what PragerU is doing. They're involved in a lawsuit. They're going that route. My preference, and I'm not privy to all the details of the lawsuit. I don't know everything that's happened to them, so I can't comment fully on that. But what I can say is my preference would be the exact same thing as the gay cake situation, which is I don't want to force them to do anything, but I can use my voice to help influence them. And I think that's what I've been able to do. And as I said, despite all that, our interview for tomorrow with Max Lugavere, which is about brain health and food, was already demonetized. So this is what we're up against. So do I think something else is going to come? Yeah, there is somebody out there, or a confederacy of a bunch of millionaires that are looking at this and going, wow, there's a real problem here. And this is the beauty of capitalism. This is the beauty of free market ideas. You don't have to have the government do everything. I don't need the government to create a YouTube alternative. What I need, or what I would prefer, is that somebody's going to come in and see a gap in the market and get in and fill that gap, and then let some competition. Let them fight it out, and then we can all go, you know what, actually YouTube was better, or you know what, let's all jump to this one, or let's cross-post on both, or whatever it is. Let's see, favorite animated movie. Oh, without question, the 85 or 84 Transformers movie. It is so much better than that mind-numbing drivel that Michael Bay, I'm a free speech guy, but Michael Bay should be in jail for this crap. His movies are horrific. I mean, I watched that last one, the one, you know, the British one, I don't know what the hell. I literally have no freaking clue what the movie was about. I have no idea. But they're all horrible, and they all progressively got worse. First one was all right. The second one was an abomination. Third one might have been a teeny bit better. Fourth one was horrific, and the last one's not even a movie. They need another word for it. The 1984 Transformers movie, which came between seasons 2 and 3 of the original Transformers cartoon that I referenced before, Orson Welles as the voice of Unicron, the death of Optimus Prime, the death of Starscream, and the death of many other characters, which was sort of a ploy because they wanted to create some new toys. The music is 80s awesomeness. Like, it's not actually Journey, and you guys probably know I love the band Journey, but there's so much of that, like, 80s awesome music. The animation is awesome. Robert Stack is the voice of, not Optimus Prime, he's the voice of Magnus Prime, someone help me here. Ultra Magnus, just so much good stuff. And it's all the original voices, you know, Frank Welker as Megatron and Soundwave, the original voice of Starscream, who was, by the way, it was a guy that also did the voice of Cobra Commander in the G.I. Joe cartoon. He was a comedian, Chris something or other, Chris something, I think with an L. He actually died, but the new ones are just terrible, but that 84 Transformers movie is spectacular. It's just, I cried. I saw that in the movie theater. My grandma took my brother and I was probably, if it was 84, I was about 8, 9, and I cried in the movie theater to that movie. Facebook, holy cow, never saw you in a t-shirt, some guns there. Yeah, I'm on this workout thing right now, and yeah, I've been working out and just trying to eat right, haven't been drinking. I'm gonna try to roll this into at least, I have so much travel in September, doing a bunch of gigs and some other stuff that I don't want to fully get into right now. But because of that, I'm just trying to like get my shit in order. You know what I mean? Like December rolled around, and it's like holiday parties and all this, and I was just like eating a lot and drinking a lot. And also because of my travel in the last 2 months, it's hard when you're bouncing around hotels and airports and everything else that, you know, I ate a lot of Chick-fil-A in December. I know a lot of people, oh, you ate Chick-fil-A, you must hate gay people, but I saw gay people at Chick-fil-A, and they enjoy the chicken sandwich. I love the chicken sandwich, what can I tell you? Let's see. Tell me about the artwork behind you. So curious. So this is Patreon. So the artwork behind me. So first, you can't see this one. So I know some of you know that there's one of me as Han Solo and Chewbacca. That's by a great artist by Mike Dennison, who's doing some great stuff with the Golden Girls that probably some of you have seen. This piece here, just this eye chart, I think we got this at Melrose Trading Post here in LA, I'm not too sure. This piece is by a wonderful artist, Caylin Rose Janet. Her website is CaylinRoseJanet.com. That's an original piece that she designed for the Rubin Report, but she does sell prints of them, as well as prints of the giant piece that we have behind the guest here. And they were both commissioned by us for the Rubin Report. Also, she painted, David, give me the exact numbers on this. I believe it is a 5-foot by 7-foot view of the Millennium Falcon going into hyperspace. I am right on that, 5-foot by 7-foot. We commissioned her to do this, and it's in our lounge here, and that's where we do a lot of our work, where we have our meetings. Sometimes the guests hang out in there. And prints are available for all these. It's CaylinRoseJanet.com, and she's really just a brilliant artist. It would be awesome if you, Crowder, and Owen Benjamin did a comedy. I'd love to do that. I just said to Owen yesterday on Twitter that I'd love to start doing some comedy stuff with him, because we're obviously drawing a lot of the same people these days, so he's looking into that. Super chat, any plans to run for public office? Good God, no. I think I can do my thing here, and that's better. But you know what, if Shapiro becomes president, maybe I'll be press secretary. How about that? I probably just got myself into a lot of trouble. Okay, I am taking questions, in case you can't figure out what I'm doing right now. I'm taking questions on Super Chat and on Patreon. And by the way, as always, this show is fully fan-funded by you guys. You enable us to do what we want, when we want, allow me to be my own boss and grow the business properly. And we've got a lot of cool stuff. We just met with our accountants and financial people. We're trying to figure out a lot of cool things that we can do for the next year that I'm really psyched about. And let's see. Super chat, some seem angry you don't push more, but your style seems to be more about finding where you can relate to the person and getting their story. Is that your intention? I like your style. It's Rubin Report, not Rubin Rumble. Well, I do want to do something where we bring in 30 people here. I start with one, and then every 2 minutes we bring in another one, and we just beat the shit out of each other. We toss each other off the set. That would be a great idea. We'll maybe get to that one day. We got to work with the insurance people on that. Emma is like up in my lap right now. Listen, as for my style, I like what I do. You guys seem to like what I do. I know that there's a certain, I have a very devoted group of virtually all anonymous trolls that want to just start shit. And if they don't like what I do, all right, don't watch the show. If you don't like it, don't watch. But if you don't like it, you can complain about it too. Look, as I say often, I'm not perfect. There are times actually where I'll be interviewing someone and they'll say something, but then they kind of keep going. I'm like, I got to get back to that. And then conversations just go in different ways. Larry King, who I consider the king of interviewing, who's become a friend of mine and he's been a mentor to me and one of the most wonderful people I know on this planet. When he was in the height of his success on CNN, interviewing the Pope and the President and the Dalai Lama and the cast of Friends and then a porn star and whatever the hell it was on any given night, people used to have that same criticism of him. So if your criticism of me is that I'm too much like Larry King, I take that as a great compliment. That being said, maybe 5 years from now, as I've evolved and the world changes and everything else, I'll look back and I'll go, man, I really should have done that there or this there. Nobody's perfect. How many of you are absolutely perfect at your job every day? But I promise you, I do try to get better all the time. And I think that the proof's in the pudding. So I appreciate your support. Super chat, you're the most truthful interviewer on YouTube. Thank you. I don't know how many people are doing interviews on YouTube, but I'm doing the best I can. Can you interview Doug Stanhope? I've asked him a couple of times on Twitter, and I think he might have said yes once, and then I don't know what happened with it. I will follow up on that. Let's see. Did YouTube ever interact with regarding your capitalism sucks experiment? So for those of you that weren't following along, we did that socialism isn't cool video. Was that last week? I believe it was last week, right? That was our DM. And they demonetized it. Socialism isn't cool. And they demonetized it. So I said, let's just do a test. A couple people asked me to do it on Twitter. I thought it was a good idea, where we titled something, Capitalism Isn't Cool. Then I did a 30-second video where I said, no, capitalism is cool. We're just doing a test here. For 48 hours, Socialism Isn't Cool was demonetized. And then, of course, they monetize it after it gets all the views. The capitalism one was never demonetized. So what does it mean? I don't know. Again, this is where, you know, you gotta, how much do you want to go down the conspiracy route? I don't know what the hell is going on over there. But that, again, that's why I want some more transparency out of them than anything else. Can you explain what the paleo diet is? So I've said paleo a couple times. I'm doing a sort of slow carb, which is sort of what Tim Ferriss talks about in his 4-Hour Body. But basically, I'm doing a lot of meat, fish, high in fat, and veggies. So like this morning, I didn't have breakfast, but I had a cup of coffee because I cannot function without coffee. I had in it was a tablespoon of MCT oil, which I believe is an extract of coconut oil, and then a tablespoon of grass-fed butter. So you're getting a good amount of fat that your body can run on, and then it looks for more fat, and hopefully it goes to your wherever you're storing your fat. Most of us in our belly, right? So I've been doing this today is exactly 14 days, and we weighed this morning. I lost exactly 5 pounds in 14 days. That's pretty good, and I've been trying to do some cardio, and I've lifted a couple times. But I got to tell you, I actually feel great. The first couple days were tough. Like, it's just your body adjusting to no sugar, you know, pretty much no booze. You can have one cheat day a week. I've only taken one, actually. So you can have some mood swings at first, but I'm actually feeling pretty good right now. David's actually doing the same diet right now. He's feeling good. Amir is doing like sort of version of it, and I think Alexis is also doing a little version of it. So we're sort of doing this as a team, and it seems to be working. I mean, I've lost weight and I feel good. So yeah, we shall see. Let's see. Facebook, Tim Allen or Jay Leno? Without question, Tim Allen. I always liked Tim Allen. I always liked his stand-up from back in the day. Home Improvement is an extremely underrated sitcom. And the coolest thing that I can tell you about Tim Allen is that he is, as far as I know, the only person to have a New York Times bestseller, the #1 movie in America and the #1 sitcom in America at the same time. So he had The Santa Claus, Home Improvement, #1 movie, #1 sitcom. And he had I believe it's his first book, Don't Stand Close to a Naked Man or Don't Stand Too Close to a Naked Man, all #1 at the same time. I mean, talk about influence and power and like fucking grabbing your moment. Also, I think he's really fascinating because he's a rare conservative in Hollywood, and his show Last Man Standing, which was just canceled, and a lot of people think it was canceled because he's a conservative because the ratings were actually pretty solid. If you watched it, look, those style, you know, the old school sitcoms, look, all of them are sort of just not great anymore. They feel very dated. But what was interesting to me about the show was that all the jokes were the reverse. The jokes were about Obama. They weren't about the Republicans. The jokes were about I believe it was his son or his son-in-law who was like, you know, a lefty into environmentalism and all that. The jokes were on him. So Tim was really doing something interesting. I actually did bump into him in LA a couple months ago at an ice cream shop, and I talked to him about coming on my show, and we're trying to work it out with our agents. I do hope it happens. And Leno, just personally, on a personal note, I was just never a fan of Leno. I love Johnny Carson. That was sort of the beginning of my formative comedy years, around 11, 12. I was born in 76. He retired in 92. I remember staying up that last night of the last night of the Johnny Carson Tonight Show. I thought he was just cool and calm and decent. I don't know, maybe some of that has seeped into me as an interviewer. So I was more of a Letterman guy, if you're looking at it between the rivalry with those guys. Leno, I just thought was kind of, you know, what everyone else thought. He was just kind of hacky and you never really knew what he thought about anything. In an odd way, I've come to like him more now because as we watch all the late night comics like, you know, Kimmel especially crying every night, and Conan's become it's a very obvious leftist stuff, and who else? Seth Meyers, definitely, and Colbert. It's like they're all doing the exact same thing. If you took all the late night guys, the one that's the most center or the most right is Bill Maher, which is fucking bananas. I mean, that's completely bananas. I dropped 2 F-bombs there for some reason. Where's Prager at in their lawsuit against YouTube? I don't know where they're at in that lawsuit. But by the way, did you see this yesterday? So there was this hack from I guess these Turkish hackers on Twitter yesterday, and they took out Sheriff Clark and a couple other people, and they got the PragerU account. For 12 hours, the PragerU account was hacked into. Last I saw, though I've been taping today, they lost their verification because when you get verification, it's linked to an email, a specific email address, but it can't be like a Gmail or a Yahoo. So they changed their email address. They lost verification. They posted, you know, their usual spam nonsense when hackers do this. And I was communicating with the Prager people. They could not get anyone for a good 12 hours. And even when the account got restored later in the evening, they couldn't get anyone from Twitter to respond to them on Twitter itself, or on the phone or email or anywhere else, and I publicly went after Twitter for it. But it's interesting because if you look at the Twitter support, at Twitter support, all day long, all they do is respond to people. People say, I don't like Twitter. How can we help you? I can't tweet. How can we help you? Meanwhile, I tweeted about this to defend Prager. They got, I think it's one of them at least got 1,000 retweets. And it's like they don't even bother responding. So what does that all mean? How many times can these platforms kick us in the head before we go, maybe they're intentionally doing this? But I just don't know. By the way, I asked Jack from Twitter to come on the show. He had told me once privately that he would do it. I haven't heard back since. But I would love to have him here. And again, I love these platforms. I want them to work the best way that they can. All right, jumping back to Super Chat. Which conservative would you like to have on your show but haven't had the chance yet? I mean, in the most obvious answer to this, if we're just in the general sense of what a conservative is, I mean, obviously having Trump or Trump Jr. Or someone from the administration, I think would be fantastic. It's one thing to rail on the mainstream media all the time. You guys know I'm all about it, and they deserve to crumble. But you're going to have to start. You have to go then to alternative media, go to new media, start answering some questions. So I would love to in that regard. I mean, really though, in the conservative sense, I mean, Thomas Sowell is the answer on that one, and we're going to make it happen. Okay. Do you vape? Well, I don't vape tobacco, but when I do smoke weed, and I have a license, don't worry about it. You know, I got that bum shoulder and that glaucoma. I guess that's a vape that I have. Is that a vape? That thing's a vape? Yeah, and I like a hybrid, like a little more indica heavy. I just want to melt into the couch and watch The Simpsons, basically. I don't need to smoke to like be outside or function or any of that kind of stuff. Hey Dave, I'm a student in video game design. Just wanted to say your videos have helped me debate many SJWs within my industry. Thanks for all your hard work. Question, are you inviting Colin Moriarty back? Yes, Colin will be back in studio in March. I don't know that we settled on the date, but we're definitely doing that. You know, I've been trying to get back into video games, and Colin got me a PlayStation 4. And, you know, mostly though, because I don't have a lot of time, I can't do these giant, massive multiplayer role-playing things. I just don't have time. And I don't even have like the mental like ability to do it at this point, because you got to devote so much of yourself to that. So I like a lot of 2D shooters. I was playing, what the hell is it called? Bang Bros? Or is that a porn site? I was playing Bro Town? Oh man, what the hell's that game called? David, help me out here. Bro Force. Not Bang Bros, that's something else. Don't go to bangbros.com, people. I was playing Bro Force, which is fun. It's sort of like Contra on steroids, and you can play. It's 4-player, you know, all local, which is cool. Let's see. Will you please interview Dick Masterson of The Dick Show? A couple of people have mentioned that. I don't know who he is, but I'll look into it. Camille Paleo, yeah, we've reached out to her a couple times. I know she's friends with Christina Hoff Sommers. I'll follow up on that. And Tommy Lahren, you know, I've gotten to know Tommy. She's actually a lovely girl. I know she gets a lot of shit, and she says some controversial things, but I like her. I'd be happy to have her in here. I think at the moment we're waiting to see if Fox will actually let her do it. Marvel or DC characters, comics, not movies. I mean, without question, Marvel. I was always a Marvel guy. Spider-Man was always my favorite growing up. Because I saw him as like he was like a kid, like I was a kid. With great power comes great responsibility. Uncle Ben, that's as good as it gets in terms of quotes. Stan Lee, who's now what, 96 years old. I mean, think of the mind of Stan Lee. Stan Lee came up with Spider-Man. He came up with X-Men. All of those X-Men, which most of them could have stood on their own as comic book characters. Between Wolverine and Professor X and Magneto and Mystique and the whole thing. But he came up with all that. He came up with the Fantastic Four, although nobody really cares about the Fantastic Four. He came up with Silver Surfer. He came up with all of this stuff. I mean, the guy's he came up with Deadpool, I think. I mean, everything. Deadpool, by the way, I can't wait for part 2. Part 1 was awesome. Let's see. Jump back to Super Chat. I dare you to have David Cole Stein on the show. I'll give you $500 if you do. Cheers, mate. I have no idea who that is, but I'll look into it. Super Chat, you are right. I can't be intellectually dishonest with myself by stifling my opinion for people who would call me a name rather than have a dialectic. How responsive are you to email? I'd like to discuss this in more detail. I'm glad you asked that. my email is insane. I try. I at least read basically everything. I at least read it. Although a lot of times people send me like essays and pages long thing telling me their life story. If you get me within a couple sentences, that's the best way. If you're trying to email me, it's rubinreport.com/contact. I probably shouldn't have even said that, even though it's public. But try to keep it somewhat brief. That's the best chance. But if I didn't respond to you, it's not because I didn't like you or I didn't, you didn't say anything worthwhile. It's just I'm trying to manage time and all kinds of other stuff. Reminder, guys, why are we doing this? We're doing this because we cracked 600,000 subscribers overnight. We are fan-funded on Patreon, patreon.com/Rubin Report, and you guys always get advance notice on these live streams and all sorts of other stuff. If you are a patron, we have one-on-one hangouts, which I think we might be sold out of, I'm not sure, but we have small group chats, video chat, where I chat with people from all over the world in small groups. It's cool. I spend one day a month from 8 a.m. to about 9 p.m. literally talking to people all over the world. My audience that funds this show. It's pretty awesome. So I'll talk to someone in Japan. Next thing you know, I'm in Mexico. Next thing you know, I'm in Australia. Next thing you know, I'm in the UK. Then I'm in Kansas. And it's really cool just getting to know all these different people. And by the way, the audience has wildly different political views. Forget about there's plenty of the diversity of all color and sexuality and all that stuff, but they have wildly different views. And I love hearing like just what everyone's going through. I talked to Tibor in Hungary, and I talked to Jessica in Australia, and all sorts of other people, and it's awesome. I talked to Steve in Canada, everybody. A couple people asking about a link to the artist's website. It's CaylinRoseJanet.com, CAYLIN rosejanet.com. Okay, back to Patreon. Please come to Germany despite bad experiences with Der Spiegel. Yeah, they wrote a really shitty article about me after spending literally a day with me, where I did 2 interviews with Yasmin Mohammed and Faisal Saeed Al-Mutar. Then I did a free speech event with Colin at USC, and they wrote just a horrific, absolutely lying, defamatory article about me, how I'm in the alt-right and all this nonsense. Of course, when I asked the writer after if he wanted to discuss any of my family that died in the Holocaust, he didn't seem to want to do that. By the way, he also interviewed me for about 2 hours in our control room, did not quote me once in the article, because there is a law in Germany that if they're going to write about you and they quote you, they have to run the quotes by you. So this guy spends all day with me, writes this horrible article, and then doesn't even quote me once. He claimed that basically that the event that Colin, I, and Steve Simpson did from the Ayn Rand Institute, we did a free speech event, very much in line with everything else we do. He claimed that basically it was a hate rally, and the article ends with something about how the security guards were clutching their guns at the end as the doors closed. You can watch the video online. I believe it's on the Ayn Rand's channel. It's about an hour and a half of us. We had a great time. There's tons of laughs. There was no hate there. There was no racism there or anything. So yeah, the media just sucks. But would I love to come to Germany? Yes, I've never been. A couple of countries that I really want to get to, and hopefully in the next year or two we can make it happen. Japan and Australia are at the top 2, as I've said before, but I'd love to get to Germany. I really want to get back to the UK, and I've only spent I spent like 2 hours in France once. I bought like an $87 baguette, so I would like to get back there. Dave, is the candidacy of Chelsea Manning serious? In the States, can a convicted traitor hold office? So I don't know about the legality of the second part. On the first part, I don't know if it's serious or not. Her Twitter feed is just completely bananas. I think she's just trolling everybody. Her one campaign video was the worst kind of scary politics of how evil everything is. I don't know what she stands for really, other than she doesn't really like our security services. But I would love to interview her. I'd love to find out what the truth is on any of that stuff. So yes, I would be happy to. Have you considered taking the show on the road? Yes, we have. So I've been doing a lot of college gigs. I'll be at Ithaca next month. I'll be at University of Tampa. I'm doing something in DC with Students for Liberty in DC. I'll be at Berkeley actually in a month or two. A whole bunch of other stuff. And I have a meeting with my agents this week about maybe taking the show on the road more. I'd love to do something at universities where we grab one professor from the university and then one out of my crew, out of this intellectual dark web, as Eric Weinstein has called it, where we just grab like one of the cool people that I'm in this machine, whatever you want to call this thing, whether it's Peterson or Shapiro or Sam or Eric or Brett or whoever it is, and then a professor from a university and then stream them live. But actually some of those events that I just mentioned, I think the Berkeley event, definitely the Tampa event, and some others we are going to be streaming live on our channel. So keep an eye out for that. I'll jump back over to Super Chat. Do you anticipate doing any further work with the Ayn Rand Institute? Thanks for your incredible, classy work. Much love from a flyover country. I love you fine people. You know, I grew up in New York and I live in LA, so I never lived in a flyover state, but I find everyone in the middle of the country to be quite pleasant. Yes, a couple of those events that I just mentioned. I believe that Tampa, I'll be with Yaron Brook at the University of Tampa. I think that's March 27th. And Berkeley, I believe that's also ARI. I don't know the date off the top of my head. Let's see. Oh, this is good. This is good. For $66 on Super Chat, which I believe is a reference to Order 66. Dave, what color would your lightsaber be? I think I identify the most with Obi-Wan. You know, like I knew Obi-Wan knew when things were good and then he had to fight the bad in the later years. That's kind of how I feel. Like I knew when the left was good. I knew when liberalism was good. And maybe I'm training a group of Jedi that are younger than me. That probably doesn't bode well for my future. Or I probably get sliced in half, or at least I disappear into my own robe. But so green, Obi-Wan's was green. I think mine would be green. By the way, you guys all already know my thoughts on Last Jedi, right? So many problems. Okay, reminder, I see a lot of people asking about the Classical Liberal shirt. RubinReport.com/store, and you're helping support the show and getting these ideas out here. Thoughts on NBA officiating? Is it as bad as the players are making it seem, or are we just too old? I love that question because, you know, I've been watching the NBA. It's one of the few things that I'm able to do where I can shut my brain off. Because even when I'm trying to take a few minutes for video games, it's not really brain off, you know? So basketball, or if I watch basically a rerun of Seinfeld or The Simpsons that I've seen before, which FXX, you know, that has the whole Simpsons catalog, these last couple days, they've been in like those amazing years of The Simpsons, that season 6 to 8. Oh, it's comedy perfection, every single episode. As for NBA officiating, I don't think it's as bad as the players are making it seem. I think players whine more than ever before, but players have always whined a lot. But there's been bad officiating over the years, and I don't think there's anything really that is particularly worse right now than it was before. Do you know of any groups in Atlanta I can hook up with? I really want to get involved with the libertarian classical liberal movement. You know, off the top of my head, I don't know any groups in Atlanta. I did an ARI event, their student conference. Was that when was that? I think that was in October. It was at the W Hotel for a weekend in Atlanta, and it was so cool. I met all of these students, all about freedom and liberty, and we had a great time. But that's not based out of there specifically, but there's definitely some libertarians there, and you can definitely find them. Let's see, back to Patreon. I would like a Generation X 25 years later interview. It appears our generation grew up and is also causing a lot of this mess. That's interesting. It's interesting because, so I'm Gen X. I was born in '76, so I'm like firmly in that Gen X thing. So Gen X basically is the children of the baby boomers, right? So we had what they call the greatest generation. That was sort of the World War II generation. They then had a ton of babies. That was the baby boomers. Then we got Gen X. That's around my age. Then after that was sort of Gen Y. So that's really, I guess, if you're sort of, you're probably around 35 Gen Y, maybe a little younger. And then into millennials and whatever they're calling this new thing now. The new one, whatever they're calling that new one, is sort of interesting because they're finding that they're more conservative now. They're not politically correct and hysterical. They're the fun meme makers, these young kids now, which is actually super cool. As for Gen X, I think a lot of us in Gen X, because of the success of the baby boomers and the explosion of the middle class, we grew up in a certain amount of comfort, so we never did anything, real, right? And I think I've tried to fight that. I think I've tried with what I do. But could Gen X be better and fight more? Yeah, but I do see a lot of people my generation that are waking up to ideas. And by the way, for all the craziness that's happening right now, the rich conversations I'm having all the time, everywhere I go that someone comes up to me, people are engaged in ideas. So don't listen to these people that want to tell you how horrible everything is, because it really just is not. Reaction to TYT hiring Dan Rather, chuckle or guffaw. From a comedian's perspective, what do you think are the best active stand-up comics out there right now? So as I've said many times, George Carlin to me was the standard bearer of true stand-up. The guys that also influenced me, I mean, Bill Cosby was a huge influence of mine. When I was 6 years old and I saw Bill Cosby himself, I was crumbling on the floor. I remember being on the floor as a 6-year-old, I think it was 1983, 7-year-old, buckled over in laughter, watching that special, Bill Cosby himself, where he's sitting there in the brown suit. It's comedy perfection. This is putting aside all of the personal flaws. So for me, personally, just the old ones, I would say Carlin, Cosby, in a little more of a contemporary sense, Jerry Seinfeld, Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock. Those were sort of the main ones. But in the contemporary sense, you know, I'm a little out of the loop of like who's like in it right now. It was cool being back at a comedy club, being back at the Comedy Store, and seeing what's going on with comedy. But mark my words, I'm going to make a major dent in the comedy situation in this country this year. I don't even want to do it. I mean, that's the thing. I'm free because I don't want to do it, but they've dragged me back in. The more I try to get out, the more they suck me back in. Any plans to go on compound media like Michael Malleus or A&A, right up your alley? A&A, who is that? I really like Michael Malleus. What a wild interview we had. I don't know that I've ever had anyone in here that surprised me more or challenged conventional thinking more than Michael Malleus. He's a really interesting guy. He's a little Willy Wonka-ish, but I really liked him. Compound media, that's run by Cumia, I think. A&A, who the hell? I'm not sure who that is, but I think that's where Gavin McGinnis now is too. I'd be happy to go on and guest on some of the shows, but I'm very happy with independence. As I've told you guys before, we've got a couple interesting offers. My agents bring things across to me, and it's like, for me to give this up, yes, I can make a lot more money going with the network or something, but to give this up, this ability to do what I want, when I want, do a live stream like this, because we were just ready to roll, do 2 shows this morning, we'll do 2 more tomorrow, then I'm not taping on Friday, but we have other stuff to do, but control my destiny and be so directly connected with you, it would take a lot. I'm not saying it can never happen, right? I'm just not, I would never say that, but it would take a lot, it really would. All right, jumping back to Super Chat. The regressive left place the group before the individual, so do white supremacists on the alt/far right. They place the group before the individual in terms of skin color. Why is one left and one right? Well, that's an interesting thought, and it's a great point. You know, people always say the Nazis were far right. The Nazis were the National Socialists, actually, which is really left. Putting that aside, because people just go crazy when you say anything like that. And they really wanted state power, right? The Nazis wanted state power. But you're completely right. If your movement is a white identitarian movement, meaning you think that this country belongs to white people based on the colors of their skin, not only is that antithetical to all of the laws of America and the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and our Bill of Rights, it is a collectivist movement. So I don't know that they don't admit that they're collectivists, but you don't own this country by any religion, color, ethnicity, or anything else. This country, there's a reason this place is the most amazing place ever. We are a melting pot that has done multiculturalism better than everybody else. Literally everybody else. No country has taken more people from more places on earth and given them more opportunity. Have we screwed up? Do we have problems? Yes, duh. But that being said, we've built something amazing here, and all of these collectivist movements, wherever they are, they're the bad guys. Most of them happen to be on the left right now, but if we're considering the I don't want to say the alt-right, because mostly that's meme makers and silly people doing nonsense, but if you want to take whatever the racist elements are of this white supremacist, whatever the hell that thing is, it's based in collectivism, so yes, it is bad. Let's see. Hey Dave, would you consider having James T. Harris on the show? I have a feeling you guys would have a lot of great things to talk about. Don't know who he is off the top of my head. David, if you could just jot that one down, we'll look into it. My man Dog Jones on Super Chat. Do you own any other shirts? I've literally worn this shirt twice. Once was the first comeback after I took my month off in August for our first live stream, and now I'm wearing it one other time, my friend. Let's see. Oh, how about this one? So I just mentioned our Michael Malleus interview, which I said is just one of the most interesting interviews I've ever done. There's something sort of really fascinating by this. Amira is telling me right now, we went into the back catalog, demonetized. We talked about North Korea, and we talked about freedom. Okay, YouTube, not friendly for advertisers. Whatever the hell that means. Okay, let's see. Do you think a new video platform based around free speech is possible? I've considered building one, but Google's pockets are deep and reach extensive. Look, as I said before, I think it is possible. It's going to take major, major money. But as far as you doing it yourself and one guy versus Google, well, there was a biblical story, I don't quote the Bible that often, of David versus Goliath. So if we have to do Dave versus Google here, you know, I guess maybe we'll have to do it. But everything being equal, I'd rather Google get their shit together, so we shall see. Hey, Rubin, who's the most handsome? Ben Shapiro, Andrew Klavan, or Steven Crowder? Klavan is a fine-looking older man. I mean, to rock that sort of the chrome dome, you know, as they say, the fully shaven head. I don't know what level of hair loss he was actually at before he fully shaved, but he's a mature older man. There you go. Will Clay Travis or Jason Whitlock return to talk more about sports? How about a sports special? That is a great idea, for sure. Let's make sure to note that, guys. I'd love to have them both in together. And I know we were working on a dinner next time Clay's in town. But yeah, we'll get them both in here. And you know what? We'll do a whole show on sports, which of course is infected by politics these days, but we'll try to focus on that. Do you believe any harder drugs such as shrooms or LSD should be legalized? Well, I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't say that shrooms should be legalized. In my college days, I did shrooms a bunch, probably 10 or 12 times over the course of a couple of years. I've done them a few times since college. One actually wasn't that long ago. I just did like a tiny bit, and I would describe what a lot of people would call low dosing. And I really just had a nice time with a couple of friends, and like that was it. And I felt fine after. I didn't hurt anybody or do any self-harm or harm to anyone else or anything like that. So again, and that's also a completely natural substance. It grows on horse shit, which is kind of nasty, and it tastes that way, by the way. But I don't see any real reason that and by the way, they've found that there's some medicinal value in it and that it can help people deal with depression and all that. So I don't have any real problem with that. I think the other one you said was LSD. I can only tell you anecdotally, I did do LSD once a long time ago when I was in college. I had a terrible experience on it. That being said, I know that there are many studies, again, that helped people deal with PTSD and chronic depression and all sorts of things. So I would need to see a little more research on that specifically. As a general rule, though, you know my feelings on the drug war is ridiculous. Obviously, marijuana should be legal. Nobody's smoking marijuana and going out there and robbing banks. And it's far less deadly than even alcohol. So I still haven't seen a good argument against that. And what has been nice is I've seen most of the conservatives these days, they take the libertarian approach to it, which is I think, fair. Okay, let's jump over to Facebook. I've been ignoring you fine people on Facebook. Would you interview with Ronan Farrow or Rose McGowan, the man who broke the Weinstein, I should say, sorry, Brett and Eric, scandal? You've never discussed the Hollywood sex crime scandal until on the Gadfather's podcast. So I was on Gadsad's channel, by the way, and I actually did open up. He asked me some really good questions. It was just last week, and I opened up a lot about some personal stuff, and we talked for probably an hour and a half. So if you're not tired of hearing me talk, you could jump over there when we're done with this. But we did get into that a little bit. Yeah, I haven't done much on it. I do have someone potentially lined up that's actually really big in that space. I don't want to say much beyond that. One more here's Patreon. What's the key to getting someone to having an open mind in conversation about politics? It's a really tough question, right? Because especially, I think, at least these days, when you're dealing with someone, and this tends to be people on the left right now, progressives, because they've accused everyone of being a racist and a bigot, and this is why Peter Boghossian, who's become a good friend of mine, watch our last interview where he really lays out what postmodern leftism is. He calls it a secular religion, but in most religions there's a redemption narrative where you can come back and be better. With them you can't, because if you're born a straight white male or a cisgender, blah, 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 you're guilty, and you must bow at the altar of diversity all the time. What a horrible way to view the world. horrible way. You are not guilty because of your skin color. You are not. You're guilty if you do bad things or whatever else, but not because of your immutable characteristics. I think that Martin Luther King guy might have said something about that. What's the best way to talk to these people? I find that the best way, I had an instance, I think I mentioned this once, I had an instance just a few months ago where a very, very good friend of mine, virtually since I was born, that's someone I've known truly my entire life, we got into it about politics at a bar, and he's a far lefty, he knows my positions, obviously, and we got into it, and at one point I said to him, because he was really all over me, and I wasn't even in the mood to talk politics, actually, and I was trying to talk about sports or something else, and I said, do you think it's possible that I believe what I believe as much as you believe what you believe? And without hesitation, he said no. And I was like, man, that is a really shitty way to view the world. That is a really shitty way to presume the worst intentions of your ideological opponents, but more importantly, your friends. So that's one thing to never do, is that my friend in this case, I believe he's wrong about all this. He's a far lefty, buys into all this progressive bullshit and all this suppression Olympics nonsense, but I believe he believes it. And if you want to have a conversation at an honest level where we can really get into why I think it's bad, why you think it's good, then I'll do it. But if you start a conversation by saying, I am so right that you can't even believe what you say to believe, that's a really horrible place to jump off of. And I know it's kind of funny for you guys to hear me say that, like I'm still going through that, but I know you guys are going through it all the time. Your favorite music, I never hear you mention music. So usually in my house, so for like, because we work from home and so our offices in effect are in my house, we usually have like some chill ambient stuff playing. So you guys know this, I really like music without words. So I like a lot of the chill ambient, like hotel bar, lounge stuff that you can, I have Spotify, we have a lot of cool ones. One day I'll post a playlist of stuff that I have on there, or I think maybe we can share the Spotify playlist. My favorite bands in general, though, Journey's my favorite band of all time. Fleetwood Mac, #2. I got engaged at a Fleetwood Mac concert here in LA. I love Billy Joel. I love 80s classic rock as a general theme. Like they were always saying something in the music. A great guy, if you like sort of the ambient but like kind of uplifting fun stuff, there's a guy by the name of Pat Metheny. Just kind of fun, like your brain will kind of feel good after. There's also a channel on Spotify called Chill Brain. It's a little more up afternoon kind of stuff. And I also have a sex playlist, but I'm not going to tell you about that right now. Okay. Super chat, $5. Take yourself for a drink, Dave. Great job. I will. Thank you very much. What's a good way to learn to do comedy and stand-up if you're starting from scratch? No matter what anyone tells you, there is only one thing you can do, which is get out there and do it. Go to those shitty open mics. They suck. The comics are there probably stealing your material. Nobody's even listening. They're either stealing your material or not listening. Go out there, bark if you have to. That's what we call barking when we'd stand outside. I don't even know that people really do it anymore. But stand outside, hand out tickets. I used to do, for years I did it, and either sleet nor rain nor snow, it didn't stop me. I always did it. There are bringer shows where you can bring a couple of friends and get stage time, but that's kind of tough on your friends, and it's not the best way to get better. Just do it, do it, do it. If it's in you, you won't be able to stop. And actually, even though I did it for 12 years in New York, the reason I stopped was because I started getting success elsewhere because I realized that my guys that were out of my crew, the best comics I knew, with really only one exception, the best comics I knew all disappeared or failed or couldn't take it anymore, and some of the worst ones succeeded. One or two exceptions to that. And I realized, I was like, wow, if I get on Twitter, if I start doing stuff on YouTube, that's how I can affect people. So just get out there and do it. It's literally the only advice that there is. Let's see. Hey, Dave, did you watch Sargon's debate against Richard Spencer? And how do you feel about hosting a rematch? I didn't see it. Let me take a look when I have a chance, and then I can address that directly. Jump over to Patreon. Hey, Dave, could you get Tim from the Military Arms channel to discuss guns, Second Amendment rights, the NRA, et cetera, et cetera? I don't know who he is. David, could we add that to the list, please? Let's see. Facebook, if you could interview anyone living or dead, who would it be? I'd say living, probably. That was a joke, people. Living or dead, who would it be? Living or dead. If there was one person I could truly sit in that chair across from, it would be George Carlin. He was, to me, the greatest comedy mind we've ever had, and he had such an innate understanding of what's happening, even right now. He would be railing against all of this politically correct drivel, but he would be doing it with comedy, and I would just love to get inside his brain. You know, I've become one of my best friends on this planet is Kelly Carlin, his daughter, who I've had on the show, and we're gonna do something with her in March, actually. She's now teaching courses helping people disconnect, and you guys know how important doing the digital detox thing is to me. But I've learned a lot of insight about George. One of the best nights that I think one of the best things that's happened to me in my life, actually. Very early on when I met Kelly, she had all of George's old records and writings and scribbles and notes and notepads and all this stuff in a room that was sort of his guest room in her house. And she has since donated all of this to I think it's the American Comedy Institute or the Museum of Comedy, which is in upstate New York. But she had all this stuff, and she let me and another comic go into the room and kind of read jokes back and forth, and it was so cool. So if he was at a restaurant, let's say, and he got the bill, he would take the bill, he would write the premise on the front, or the setup on the front, and the punchline on the back. And we were kind of stoned, and we just went back and forth reading stuff to each other, and I was crying. I mean, tears of happiness and laughter, but crying, yeah. What are your thoughts on fake news hysteria? Yeah, you got to tune out a little bit out of the mainstream noise. It's just noise. Every day, another Russia thing that then they went from all the Russia stuff, and now we've got him on this, and then that doesn't work, and it gets aimed back at the Clintons or the Democrats, and then that happens, and then they'll go, okay, we're done with Russia, so now it's about Trump's mental health, and then when it turned out his mental health was fine, now it's about Trump's weight, and the media is just feeding everyone garbage all the time. It's important to be aware, and you know what? Watch Phil DeFranco if you have a chance. Watch some Joe Rogan. Listen to some Sam Harris. Watch Jordan Peterson. I mean, so many of the people that are in the mix here, you will get a better, more holistic sense of what's actually happening in the world than watching mainstream media. I mean, I watch CNN. I don't watch CNN. I watch it, meaning I'll turn it on for a split second just to see what's on the crawl, and every other time it's Trump drinks too many Diet Cokes. Trump said this about that, and it's not. This isn't real. Let's deal in reality, people. All right. Are we seeing a return? This is Facebook. Are we seeing a return to the Enlightenment liberalism versus authoritarian dichotomy, turning away from right-left debate? Love the show. Keep it up. So my direct message next week, which will be a preamble to having Shapiro and Peterson live, I'm going to address just that. So please stay tuned on that. Patreon, why are you asking Candace Owens back on to debate? I don't think anyone wants to see another Save Dave. So look, the Candace thing with Blair, yes, was it a shit show? Was it probably my worst moment in terms of being in control of what I'm doing here? Yes. Many of you said to me, Dave, everyone gets one. That's what a lot of Patreon people said. Dave, that thing was terrible, but everyone gets one. Look, Save Dave trended on Twitter. That's pretty cool. The memes that came out of that, my favorite one was the Curb Your Enthusiasm one, as the two of them are shouting across from me. Someone lays in the Curb Your Enthusiasm music as I'm kind of just, exasperated. Would I have done it slightly differently? Yes. Could they have both done different things? Yes. I think that what I would say is this. I think everyone deserves a second chance. And I'm certainly not someone that's not going to give someone a second chance if their intentions are good. I think Candace is actually doing a lot of good stuff right now, and I think she deserves a second chance in that regard, and I have no problem giving it to her. All right, jump back over to Super Chat. Dave, I've been watching your shows for a while, and you were one of my favorite channels. Thank you. Have you tried to reach out to A.S. Lee, a renowned thinker of the Chinese alt-right? I haven't. I see you gave me his Twitter handle there. I don't want to say it out loud until I see it, see what the feed's like. But let me take a look at that, David. Could we add that to the list, please? What's more important to culture, art, or politics? This is Super Chat 2. So this is a great question. Art or politics? Well, if we're saying that everything is art, meaning television, movies, painting, sculpting, stand-up comedy, acting, or politics, well, then I would say it's the former. It's art in the broad sense of what you mean by art. Politics, I mean, the reason that I'm for classical liberalism and small government is that politics shouldn't be that important to you. The reason everyone's going crazy these days is because politics has become a sport. Politics has infected everything. Everywhere you go, everyone wants to talk about politics all the time. That's not good. You know, one of the reasons people will say to me, Dave, why don't you do a daily show? We could do a daily show. Now, I don't even know that it would be financially sensible because the more shows we do, the more it costs us to do them and the resources, and because the YouTube monetization is so bad, I don't even know that we might end up losing money, but putting that aside, I don't think people need to be thinking about politics all the time. I think if I give you guys 1 or 2 shows a week for an hour or an hour and a half or sometimes 2 hours or 3 hours, and we're going to do probably 2.5 or 3 hours with Jordan and Ben, if I give you that and you give me in exchange 2 hours of your time a week with the amount of stuff that's out there, and you take away a little something, if anything, I think it would be insulting to keep jamming that stuff down your face. So I think we have to, I think actually in the right sense, politics shouldn't be that important. The government should be small enough that it can basically keep you safe, keep the roads going, right? Keep schools going. I do believe there's some role for government, absolutely. But the government should be small enough that we don't have to care about it that much. And right now, we care about it too much because the conversation has just gotten out of control. Okay. Oh, you know what? So we can go till about 5:15, so we'll do about a half hour more. At 5:30, I have a one-on-one hangout because, you know, when we do these at rubinreport.com/donate, if you donate a certain amount, we do monthly hangouts, but I also do one time if you just do a one-time donation on PayPal. So I have one at 5:30, so I can't go much longer than that. Super chat, hey Dave, congrats on the 600K. Would you consider interviewing Jeremy Hanbley of the YouTube channel The Quartering? He recently exposed a cover-up of sex offenders and Magic the Gathering community. I heard a tiny little something rumble about this on Twitter. I don't know that much about it. You know, it's funny. I get people asking me all the time. They'll send me a random YouTuber. Can you help him do this? Or people will say, I'm at school and this is happening. It's like, I got to kind of manage the amount of people that I can sort of help, but I'll at least look into it when I have a moment. Okay, let's jump back to Patreon. Hey Dave, at this point, whenever I'm having a conversation that gets slightly political with people from the left, I'm afraid that if I say anything in disagreement, they will accuse me of being a bad person. It becomes a toxic climate where you can't disagree with anything without being personally attacked. Any advice on that? I mean, again, the best you can do is make it clear that your views don't come from a racist place. Your views don't come from a bigoted place. Where do your views come? Where do all the things that I talk about all the time? Even these conservatives who I disagree with on certain things, like Ben Shapiro on abortion or death penalty or whatever it is, we're both taking principled stands on where our views come from, right? What are the rights that are given to you in this Constitution, and what is the role of government? So I think look, the best thing you can do is try to explain to someone, let them tell you to your face that they think you're a bad person. Try it that way. Tell them, okay, I'm for low taxes. I'm for less regulation. And they'll go, well, what about this? Do you think I'm a bad person? Do you think it's possible we just have a political disagreement? You're supposed to have political disagreements in societies like ours. You know where they don't have that many political disagreements? North Korea. Try that. You can have more healthy political disagreement in America than any country on earth. No one's coming for you over your political disagreements. If you threaten to kill somebody, or if you actually kill somebody, that's a problem. You can't come onto my property and start talking shit. But beyond that, we're supposed to have disagreements. Be the best person you can be. I'm trying to do it all the time. I mean, listen to Jordan Peterson, 12 Rules for Life. Would love to hear a discussion by a competent subject matter experts making a clear delineation between classical liberalism and libertarianism. I mean, there's many episodes that I can point you to. I've done a couple DMs on it. Go back, check my interview from about 1.5 years ago with Steve Davies from the it's not from the London School of Economics, I'm blanking on where he's from, the London Institute of something. Somebody help me out here. I'll get it. But go back, listen to my interview with Steve Davies. Go back, listen to my interview with Randy Barnett from Georgetown University, who has argued in front of the Supreme Court. Great delineations. Basically, the only real functional difference is that classical liberals generally tend to see some usefulness for government. Where libertarians, it's hard to pin them down, because a libertarian, you could be a total ANCAP and say that even the courts and the roads should be privatized. I'm certainly not that, but it's an interesting conversation to have. That's what I had with Michael Malleus, and I've had it with several other people on the show. So I would say a classical liberal is a little more of what I would say is a bit more of a realistic libertarian. But the arguments of libertarianism, any argument that tells me that the private sector and free markets and individualism can beat out what the government can do, I love those arguments, and I can at least intellectually go there. But at the same time, I went to a state school, State University of New York at Binghamton. I got a good education. I went to a good public school. It's a blue ribbon public school, and I got a good high school education. So I believe that done right at the local level, there is a room for government to do things. The federal government is what really needs to shrink. Okay. Okay, another person wants me to go out for a drink. Okay, people really want me to drink again now that I haven't been drinking for a couple weeks. Super chat. Been waiting to see Peter Schiff on the show. He's the most informative capitalist I've seen in recent years, and he does talk show. Any chance he'll be on? You know, we had reached out to him years ago, and I think maybe it fell off the map. I'd be happy to have that conversation. Super chat. Dave, I think you're awesome. Keep up the good work. Thank you. You need more glamour shots. Can I shoot you one day? We do. I desperately need new glamour shots, as they were, or headshots, whatever you want to call them. If you are a photographer and you're in the LA area, just drop us a line on the contact page on RubinReport.com, and let's see if we can work it out. Because I never really had great photos that I absolutely loved, because I'm always running to do 1,000 things, and it seems low on the priority list, but I know it shouldn't be. And especially now with the beard, now that it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere and people dig it, and I'm actually digging it. I do need some new shots, so let me know. Let's see. Super chat. Ken Cooley is a California State Assemblyman, Purple District, Christian Democrat. That could be an interesting discussion. That does sound like an interesting mix. Let me look into it. Super chat, I love your channel. I found you through Shapiro and have watched just about every one of your videos. You make navigating the leftist universities more bearable. Also, that shirt is amazing. RubinReport.com/store for the shirt, and thank you for that. And if you're out there in a university, if you're watching this right now, just keep fighting. Keep standing up for yourself. If you don't stand up now, you won't magically get braver when you get out. It ain't gonna get easier, people. It ain't gonna get easier. All right, let me jump back to Patreon. Phil and Crowder debate. Could you make that happen? Well, I assume you mean Phil DeFranco and Steven Crowder. I'd be happy to do it again. Crowder doesn't travel that much, but Crowder, if you're watching this, I'll text you after. But I'd love to get you in here, and if you're talking about DeFranco, I would be happy to talk to him about that. Okay. Though I and many others thought that the Blair White Candace Owen thing was more of a disaster than anything else, I still see the value in getting two reasonable people together with differing views for a discussion moderated by you on a regular basis. When you consider doing more moderated debates, congrats on 600,000 subscribers. Thanks. Yeah, I definitely want to do more debates. So when I'm doing this thing next week with Shapiro and Peterson, I don't know if that's going to be a debate in a traditional sense, because I don't know that there's, you know, yes, Jordan believes more, Jordan's a Christian and Ben's a Jew, but I think their belief in belief is sort of similar. I think they both, Jordan's probably a little more left, kind of where I've never heard Jordan say anything politically that I flat out disagree with. So obviously he'll have some disagreements with Ben, but I want to talk about some other stuff. I don't want to give too many hints right now, but I promise I'm going to go in a different direction than usual. I definitely want to do more debates. There's a possibility that we've got a very cool live stream happening that Monday on February 2nd. It'll either, I think it's going to be February 2nd or February 5th with two people. I'm trying to work it out. I don't even know if I've told my guys yet that I'm trying to work on this one, but we shall see. Let's go back to Patreon. Jordan Peterson has said that most of his followers are male. Would be interesting to check stats on your followers and then discuss the possible reasoning, especially related to classical liberalism. You know, that's a great question. I don't know that we have, YouTube actually gives you great analytics. Our watch times, by the way, are off the charts. Last month, our average watch time, I think, was over 20 minutes, which is unheard of on YouTube, where it's usually like 6 seconds or something. All our numbers are just exploding, which is phenomenal. From what I can see on there, last I saw, I think we were about 80% male, 20% female. Now, that's hard to really garner what that exactly means, because YouTube in general, as far as I know, skews heavily male. Politics in general tends to skew male. I suspect that our 20% female is probably a little disproportionately high female, but that's also just the people I think that are signed in on YouTube, that they're getting any information from Google. So there's many more people. I get a lot of mail from females, so I don't know that I have anything, but it's an interesting piece of this, that why are so many young men sort of attracted to these ideas? And I think it does have a lot to do with what Jordan Peterson's talking about all the time, that young men have sort of been left behind, that they've been ignored or treated poorly or mocked constantly, and they're trying to find some answers. I think Jordan's doing a beautiful job of making it happen. All right, jump back over to Super Chat. Any chance of an interview with Bill Maher? Love your work, Dave. Yes. So I mentioned George Carlin if I could have anyone, but Bill Maher probably at this point is the top of people that are living. I've met him a couple times. We've had some hot and cold moments. I've talked to the producers there. They basically said I will be on the show at some point. You know, for a while, Bill and I agreed on so much that I think they didn't want to bring on people that just agree on stuff. Now, you know, where I've shifted more to really to a libertarian place of things, and I don't want to get lost in the classical liberal label and libertarian and all that, where he definitely he does trade in identity politics still, right? He calls Republicans racist all the time and all that, which is ironic because then the left uses that on him when he talks about Islam. Bill and I could have a great discussion about what's happened to modern liberalism. So I hope I'll be on the show, but everything being equal, I'd rather get him here where we could do an hour or two and just really get into the thick of it. He's also been a huge influence of mine. I'd say about 4 or 5 of his HBO specials are spectacular. He's done a ton of them. But hopefully we can get him here. Hopefully I'll be on the show. But I've also gotten to a point where I'm kind of like, I don't want a lot. You know, like I used to, okay, I want to be on The Tonight Show or I want to be on Real Time or any of that stuff. And it's like, at some point, you kind of just got to do what you do and hope that those things come around if you do good work. Dave, growing up, who is your favorite, Luke Skywalker or Han Solo? Keep up the great work. Love your show. You know, when I was younger, people used to say I looked like a young Luke. I guess my hair maybe was a little lighter or something, although I swear to you, this is all my hair and I've never colored it in any way. So I think I more identified with Luke. I don't know that I ever felt as cool as Han is, right? Han was the coolest. I mean, even Force Awakens, which I loved Force Awakens, Han made that movie. There was something just the wit and Harrison Ford. I said to David this weekend, we were watching Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. That, by the way, that opening scene in Temple of Doom with the poison and the lazy Susan around the table and that whole spectacular scene. What amazing movie making that is. That's Spielberg and his wife Kate Capshaw is the woman in it. But Harrison Ford, it's like, I don't know that he's even ever been nominated for any acting award, not that that really matters, but it's like all that guy ever did for the last 40 years is make great movies that everybody loves, from Star Wars to Indiana Jones to The Fugitive to Air Force One, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like that guy is what an actor really is all about. And you don't even know that much about him personally, which is actually refreshing because these actors are such pain in the ass mother Fletchers. Steve Davies is from the Institute of Economic Affairs in London. I think I said the London Institute of Economics. Okay. Let's see. Go to Patreon for a second. Can you not make a strong classical liberal case for abortion, for example, individuals' right to life? So this is what I got into with Ben. And look, I like to argue from fact. I like to argue from law. Now, you have the right, what do you have in America, right? You have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then we have other rights that are delineated, obviously, in the Bill of Rights and local laws and things. So the right to life, you have the right to life. The question is, what is a life? And when they were writing that, did they mean a life that is not yet born? Now, what I said to Ben was, for me, and this is partly based on emotion, by the way, and I admit that, this is partly based on a feeling. I want the woman to be able to control her body. Up until 20 weeks, there's a lot of evidence that the fetus does not feel anything. At around 20 weeks, there's evidence that it does. So to me, that would be a point where I could say, all right, I'm pro-life. I'm against abortion from that point forward. I'm not even that comfortable with that, but I think you can make a sensible argument, and that's the argument I made to Ben. Now, Ben's counterpoint was, well, look, if you're saying it's a life at 20 weeks, don't tell me it's not a life at 19. And by the way, I can't argue that point. I accept that. So is there a classical liberal argument? Well, yeah, the argument against abortion, that the conservative argument would be similar to the classical liberal, which would be you're supposed to defend the life. Now, generally, people on the left and liberals are talking about the life of the woman carrying the fetus, but is there an argument that that is a life? Of course there is an argument. And that's why when I hear the real radicals on abortion, it's when they say, no, you can have a late-term abortion, 6, 7, 9 months. There are people who literally say to term, that you can have abortion, meaning if you are 8.5 months pregnant, there is no doubt at that point in virtually every case that that fetus can live outside the womb, and you're going to allow that to be aborted. I mean, that seems radical to me. But again, this is a place where it's great to have an interesting argument. And I saw somebody on Twitter, not on Twitter, on YouTube. It came up in my suggested videos. It was something like, Ben Shapiro destroys, in caps, Dave Rubin on abortion. And then they just play our thing. And it's like, no, we disagreed. It's all good. It's okay, people. It's all right, really. Facebook, Mr. Rubin, what would you need to see from the works of Ayn Rand to become a committed objectivist? You seem to consistently agree with her arguments, but only refer to yourself as a liberal. It's a good question. First off, I've said this before, but I like doing public events with ARI. They've made it very clear I can say whatever I want, do whatever I want. I go on stage, I talk about all sorts of funny things and silly things sometimes, and all my classical liberal beliefs, and they're totally cool that we are 100% aligned as far as free speech. Look, Yaron Brook has laid out objectivism in this very studio extremely well. I'm Rucka, the YouTuber, when we did YouTube Week, he really laid out objectivism, not collectivism, really well. I basically like the ideas of objectivism. I like the ideas of rational self-interest. Do what is good for you, thus you will start doing what's good for your family, your community, and it starts with you and goes this way, not this way down to you. I really like those ideas. I would say, and there's the culture element to it. I like the part that this isn't all coming from religion or things that we can't prove. I would just say that at this point, for me, more than anything else, I just don't need another label attached to me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm always trying to clean up the mess between liberal and progressive, or classical liberal versus libertarian. To add another word into that mix, especially right now, while so much is being juggled all the time, I just don't see value in that specifically, but make a great argument. I know you guys love epistemology when you're objectivists, so let me know. Super chat, Dave, thanks for the shout out. A.S. Lee is a fierce thinker, and he coined the term white left that is used by Chinese netizens to insult leftists. You will not regret at least talking to him. I promise you I will look into it for sure. You should look into getting comedian Josh Wolf on the Rubin Report. Not sure who that is. David, add him to the list, please. Let's see. Did that one. There's a couple here that aren't deleted, guys. Keep up the great work, my friend. You're one of the greatest on YouTube and second only to Rogan in conversation. All right, I'll accept that. I think some people probably like me more. Some people probably like him more. I'm sure he's okay with it, and I'm okay with it too. Hey, Dave, love your work. Your show is a breath of fresh air. Also, you should make a shirt that says monetize this. That's actually a pretty good idea. We'll look into that. Huge respect from Down Under, mate. Much love from Little Ty, Big Ty News. Real fake news, that is real. Don't know what the hell you're talking about, but okay. Back to Patreon. Would you still be interested in speaking at the University of Colorado? I think Turning Point is willing to sponsor you there. Yeah, I'd love to. You know, I went down to Palm Beach right before Christmas, and I spoke at the Turning Point USA college event. And I think they said it was the largest gathering of conservative college students ever. I went up there. I talked about being for gay marriage. I talked about being pro-marijuana, against the death penalty, for public education, et cetera, et cetera. I got a freaking standing ovation from these evil conservatives. And by the way, there were gays there, and there were black people there, and Muslims, and everything else. They were all there. And we had a great time, and Charlie Kirk, who was here last week, obviously spoke there. Candace spoke, Trump Jr. spoke the day before, Ben spoke there, Prager, Greg Gutfeld. And it was a great, diverse group of people. And again, I got a standing ovation for talking about our differences. I promise you, I would gladly give that same speech if any progressive student organization wants to invite me. And I've made that offer many times. I have yet to make it happen. Facebook, what are your thoughts on the Women's March? Look, you know, if you've got the money for a pussy hat, well, it's your right to spend it. I mean, I don't know. Look, I'm for anyone expressing whatever their beliefs are. I don't know what these people are really marching for. Women are free in this country. Period. You're free to do whatever you want. They are making it seem that Trump is coming for women, or that the government is coming for women. I just don't know what they're marching for. It becomes this intersectional mess where they just love the idea that they're being oppressed, or that someone's attacking their pussies, or whatever it is. I just genuinely don't know what it is. But I do think there's a danger there when you gin up all of this angst and anger with people that aren't really oppressed. You know who's really oppressed? Go see what's going on with the protests in Iran. Where's the left on that, talking about that? Women that are really oppressed. Where's the left on all of the problems in Islamic countries with women and women that are stuck in burqas and that, although they now are starting to be able to drive in Saudi Arabia and all that, women are not oppressed in this country. Are there people that are bad people? The Harvey Weinsteins of the world? Absolutely. And should those people go down? Of course they should go down. But there's something else going on here that doesn't really make sense anymore. But their idea of protesting, all right, you want to get out there and put on your pussy hat and make these, signs that make no sense, white women walking around going, I hate white feminism because I will self-flagellate in front of all of you. I bow to you all the time. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. But how do you really feel, Dave? All right, we got about 10 more minutes, guys, and then I need a 15-minute break before I jump on with the one-time PayPal donator, RubinReport.com/donate. If you want to do this one-on-one with me, there's also a couple slots left on Patreon group chats, I think. Oh, man, I need some water here. Let's see. Keep up the... Oh, no, we just did that one. Would you be open to hosting a debate between Yaron Brook and Ben Shapiro on the impact of Judeo-Christian values on Western society? I've loosely discussed it with both of them. I think they're in the loop on it. I suspect it will happen at some time. I'd like to do that one live, maybe. So stay tuned on that. We'd probably do it somewhere in the LA area. Favorite guest, is that too mean of a question? Well, it's not a mean question. My favorite, it's really hard to say. I mean... My favorite guest, look, I can say this, that when we had Sam Harris on, I believe it was September 8th, 2015, the first show at Aura TV when we rebranded this into an interview show. I wasn't even intending on doing an interview show. I thought we were going to still do like a panel show like we were doing at the Young Turks, and this was going to be a one-off with Sam. That show so affected me and felt so real and so important, and we were trying to clean up the mess that all of these haters and liars had created, and it was so intimately intertwined with all of the horrible stuff I had been seeing on the left for so long, that to me, it was like a truly seminal moment for me because it changed my career, it changed my thinking, and I was able to help someone at some level that I think was so unfairly under attack. So I think that interview affected me the most. But I've had some of the interviews that I've had here, I learn every week. Like, I know it's weird, like people don't seem to learn week to week. Every day, I was even thinking this today, we did one of our President's Week interviews, which we're gonna put up in February, 5 days, 5 different professors on 5 different presidents. And we did the one about Lincoln today. And I've seen the Lincoln movie, and obviously I know enough about Lincoln, but like, I kept thinking, wow, I'm learning now. Like, I get to learn every single day on this show, which is incredible. So when I sit here across from Eric Weinstein, who I think could possibly be the smartest man on earth, and Sam Harris, and Jordan Peterson, and Glenn Beck, and Prager, and Shapiro, and all these people, it's like, I'm able to actually learn still. So is there a favorite? I don't know I truly don't know that there's actually a favorite that I could specifically pick out one person. All right, I did that already. Can I be a progressive but an anti-federal central government? I consider myself progressive, but I admit the failure of a large federal government. And this is like when you hear people say they're left libertarians. I don't really understand what that means. I don't think you can be you can be for progress, meaning equality, meaning true equality under the law, which, by the way, we have right now. We have no laws that stop someone based on the color of their skin or their sexuality or anything else from getting married or taking a job or anything like that. Does it mean that there's no bigotry? Of course not. But if you are afraid of strong federal government and power that gets out of control, then you cannot be a progressive. They want to make government stronger. They want to this is the irony right now, is they're screaming all day long about Trump. What is their answer? Their answer is, we're going to take guns away from you, one, because progressives want to take guns away. Well, you hate the government, but you also want to take people's guns away. There's a logic problem there. But it's also that if you can't just say, I hate Trump and I want big government, but well, then occasionally you're going to get a big government guy, meaning you're going to get a president that you don't like, in this case, Trump. They'd be thrilled if Bernie was abusing executive actions and running rampant with the office of the president, because it's their guys. So you have to have principles when it's hard to have principles. I would say scale back the power of the federal government. 3 branches of government. The president's not supposed to write laws. He's supposed to sign them. The judicial's supposed to make sure they're legal. Next time you're in DC, please go to the one memorial that's a little off the beaten path. Thomas Jefferson, as you guys know, he's really my favorite founder. One of our president's shows is going to be on him. Go into the Jefferson Memorial, read everything that they have. They have these giant plaques with his writings around. I think there's 5 or 6 of them. Read that and figure out what this country is about. And I don't see a way that you can be a progressive and also, yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me. I just don't see it. All right, a couple minutes left. 5-minute warning, people. Super chat. Thanks, Dave. I'm glad I found your channel. Keep up the good fight. I have no choice, man. What else am I going to do? You know, it's too late. I want it to be in the NBA. Second favorite guest. I can't do it. How do you stay motivated? Do you get highs and lows? What keeps you consistent? I'm glad you asked that. And I need to tell people at the beginning, we should do more personal things like that because I'm really happy to answer them. So if we've got anything personal, now's your chance. Jump in quick. I do get down, no doubt about it. I mean, I put a tremendous amount of energy into this. I am living this thing. As you can see, I do not censor myself with you guys. Generally, the hate that I get online doesn't really affect me. It can be annoying sometimes. I mute a lot of people. Like if you're just especially if you're just an anonymous hater and all you're doing is getting in my mentions to fight with people and tell me I'm an asshole and blah, 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 then I just mute you and you go to the void and whatever. I just couldn't care less about those people. It's a very special person that I block because if I block you, that means I don't want you in my mentions at all because then you're just there to fight with people. So you're very special if I've blocked you. But some of that can be exhausting, right? And I would say more than anything else, I'm kind of world weary, I suppose. Like these are the issues that I care about and that I think about constantly, that I worry about what the fate of Western society is. I worry about the direction the country's in and that we'll be as free as we are right now. So that definitely does take a toll on me. What do I do to relax? I try to exercise, I take Emma out for a lot of walks, try to hang with some friends. David's an excellent chef. Check out Instagram.com/David's Cookbook if you want to see some of the cool things that I'm eating, or great things that I'm eating, actually. I enjoy good red wine, love my coffee, try playing basketball when I can, whatever else it is. Now I'll be getting back to stand-up a little bit. But yeah, I struggle with things just like everybody else, and I'm not always my best self, but I'm usually trying to be, so there you go. Super chat, love your dedication to truth and freedom, Dave. Best wishes to you and your husband. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll do, we got 4 more minutes, so I'll do 2 more questions and then I'll do a closing statement. Patreon, do you think we can learn something from the Jedi-Sith conflict in Star Wars to what goes on in the world? Is it time for the gray Jedi to rise? So the gray Jedi, for those of you that are not too aligned, are Jedi that sort of have both traits of Jedi and Sith. So they're a little bit good and bad, much like gray is between black and white. So there's a little subtlety there. One of the reasons I love Star Wars is because of that internal fight of good and evil that we all have, the light and the dark. We all have that at a personal level. One of the reasons that I think in retrospect, especially after seeing Last Jedi, which I'm starting to like the prequels more in a weird way. I never had a major problem with the prequels. The acting's terrible, the dialogue's terrible, but the underlying story about power and how someone can manipulate both sides to build weapons and an army and can have people using the political machine against itself, the good guys becoming the bad guys, all of that. There's an incredible political story in the prequels that unfortunately I think George Lucas probably should have had someone else direct them because I think that could have cleaned up the mess. And yes, Jar Jar and pod racing and a couple other things. But the overarching story about power, and then when you relate that to the good and the bad and all of that, I think it's very cool. So I think there's a lot of things that I relate. It's why I talk about Star Wars so much, you know? And unfortunately, I'm a little soured on it because of The Last Jedi. How the hell do you not tell us who Snoke is? Ryan Johnson, who the hell is Snoke? And don't tell me you're going to tell me in a cartoon now, or you're saving it to the next movie. It's like, come on, man. I've accepted Force Mirage Luke already, fine, and some other problems. I mean, Finn should have died in both movies. I've already done this with you guys. Okay, 2 minutes left. So let me just pimp out a couple things. January 31st, noon Pacific, Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, in this very studio for a couple hours. If you're in LA, Jordan Peterson's at the Orpheum that night. I will be there. I'm going to go there with Colin, actually, Colin Moriarty. So if you are in town, come say hi to us. Maybe we'll grab a drink. RubinReport.com/store if you want the Classical Liberal t-shirt. Those of you that support us on Patreon, as always, I give you guys a special shout out. You enable us to do this, whether YouTube monetizes us or not. We can still keep going. We're always trying to figure out other ways to make this a functional and secure business. So it's patreon.com/Rubin Report, and you can pledge $1, you can pledge $500, and depending on what it is, you get all sorts of different rewards. If you want to talk to me one-on-one, you want to get in our group text chat, which is actually pretty cool. I'll do that tomorrow, by the way, and whatever else there is. Our goal by the end of 2018, it's ambitious, but I truly think we can do it, is 1 million subscribers by the end of this year. I think we can do it. This channel has existed for about 4 years. No, I've been in LA 5 years, but we didn't really start the whole time there. This channel's existed for, let's say, 4.5 years, even I'll say 5 years, 600,000 subscribers. That's a little more than 100,000 a year, but it's really peaked in these last 2 years. I truly think that with the 11.5 months left in this year, we can get 400,000 subscribers this year. So if you dig what we do, please, retweet us and post it on Facebook and tell your friends. And, we have no budget right now for advertising. We put, $20 or something when we do direct messages on Facebook, but we don't buy YouTube ads, we don't buy Twitter ads, any of that kind of stuff. It's partly because the YouTube rev is all over the place, so it's hard to figure out what monthly budgets are, and we want to save that so we can hire people properly and all that. But you guys are the engine that makes this thing go. I think we can get to 1 million by 2018. All right, I have been talking now for an hour and a half after doing 2 interviews today, shot a direct message this morning. Emma's looking at me like she's got to pee. I thank you guys for your support. I mean, 600,000 subscribers on YouTube, where most people are watching cat videos and prank videos and people getting hit in the nuts and all that stuff. It's like it's a real accomplishment. And as I said, our watch times last month, I think it was over 20 minutes of video. That is awesome. By the way, if you don't want to watch here, we're on Spotify now. We're obviously on iTunes. However you podcast, you can do that. And you can get the podcast ad-free for $5 a month on Patreon. You can do that. Anyway, I thank you. I'll take one more sip and then give an official goodbye. All right. Thank you, guys. Have a great night, everybody. And and tomorrow, part 1 of it's my direct message for the week, and then part 1 with Max Lugavere, all about food and your brain and eating right, and a little escape from politics this week, and then we're back at it next week. Okay, ciao.